Well, the blanket's new, so he's like, ooh. Here.
Okay, cool. Can I see the questions?
Yep.
All right. So I'm here with Susie Hinz and Kerrin Smith, who are two of my really good friends, and I'm going to go ahead and do an interview with them about what it's like to be a woman and also to be a writer.
My name is Susie Hinz. I am a alumni of UMBC. I graduated with a degree in Gender and Women's Studies in 2014. And since then I've been an AmeriCorps Vista, and I currently work at a nonprofit in Baltimore, Maryland Humanities. And on the side, I am a blogger, and I also am trying to write a book, but we'll see if it ever happens. And
Cool.
That's me.
Thank you.
I'm Kerrin Smith, and I write poetry, and I'm currently in an MFA program at the University of Baltimore, the Creative Writing and Publishing Arts program. So next year I will be graduating, and my thesis will actually be a self-published collection of my poems. In addition to that, I also work on the University of Baltimore's campus as a graduate assistant for Spotlight UB, which is UB's theater arts programming office, and then I'm also a writing composition tutor in our writing center. Well, I was thinking about this a lot. You know, I do consider myself a feminist. I consider myself who thinks about gender a lot. But I was thinking about this question, and I realized that when I am writing my poetry, I am often trying to be as unfeminine as possible. I'm moving away from, or trying to move away from a place where my poetry is very personal, but it always ends up being super personal, and so it's kind of a weird push and pull where I'm not trying to be a woman writer, but you know, themes that are typically associated with women are often in my poems, no matter what I do. So,
Can you give an example?
well, I mean, nature. I've been writing a lot about nature recently. Have written a couple poems recently about my body and a condition that I have that affects my hormone levels, and how that relates to my image of myself.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like I write like really hyper-personal blogs about my life and experiences, and I feel like as a feminist that like it's just deeply entwined with that. But I also think that my, you know, sort of identity as a woman and a feminist means that I try to also focus on like other issues at large, so not just always focusing inward, but thinking about you know, the way the world is and the way that other people experience the world, perhaps through like my like hyper personal intense experiences. I've always, my whole life, just felt super compelled to write, and for a long time it was really, before I was in college, it was really personal. It was like a lot of journaling, and then when I was in college, I loved to produce like material that other people could interpret and could take as their own, or sort of meld into whatever they needed it to be. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to blogging, because I'm drawn to write, I'm drawn to talk about my experiences, but I like really want everyone else to like be talking about similar things too. I mean, if they want to, obviously. So that's sort of why I've chosen the platform that I have, because I find it to be a really deeply meaningful way to engage with the people in my life, and myself too. I really learn a lot when I write.
Yeah. So a means of connection in many
Yeah,
ways.
absolutely.
And Kerrin?
I guess there's a feeling that I try to chase when I write. You know, when I was really little, I was always like hyper imaginative, always creating these sort of like pretend situations for myself, and I always had this kind of, when I was either playing, like, create, like, you know, like living in a world that I made, or if I was reading a book that I really enjoyed, watching a movie I really enjoyed, I noticed that there's a sort of sensation of a pull in my gut almost that I get when I'm really engaged with writing. So I try to recreate that myself through, I try to create that writing that gives people that sensation, gives me that sensation.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's like I know that feeling. It's like that creative buzz that occurs in your gut.
Exactly.
That you're like, I want to do it, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to create.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you like have created and you like hand it to someone and you watch it happen in them, or they engage with it with you, it sort of just like sort of multiplies that into like you talking about it and then like wanting to edit it and like all of that.
Yeah, it's really rewarding when somebody like reads a poem and they're just like, oh my god, like that line is really good, and it's really cool for me when people are drawn to specific things that I've written. Either just a line or maybe even a word in something.
Well, for me, it's like, oh, you get me. Like, even when I am like super creative, even when I'm like talking in like a manner that's like most people might not get, like, you get me, and that like that's a whole nother like aspect or like level to communicating with people that I think is really special. And I think it actually does have a lot to do with gender or like race and things like that. I think about, I mean, I'm going to speak towards my identity a little bit, but like being mixed race and like reading things that mixed race people have produced, it's like, oh shit, that's the thing. That's where I am. It's that feeling of not belonging but belonging, and I don't know how to word it otherwise. Or like even with gender, like, oh, that's being a woman for me. So it encapsulates that experience and it communicates it in a new way. And I think both of you do that extremely well. I know like a lot of people, like your writing resonates with a lot of people.
And I think, I'm sorry,
no,
but I think that I often write about trauma and the experiences of being a survivor. And I think that too, perhaps similarly to reading the writing of other mixed race people, it's sort of like I see myself in other people writing, and then for them to see themselves in me is really powerful. To have people that I don't even know that well like walk up to me and be like, I read that thing that you wrote, like, yeah, I had this experience, or like this happened to me, this happened to my daughter. And so it's just like creating a conversation around a shared experience. And it just makes me feel more seen, you know, because we don't talk about that stuff. And so to create a platform for people to talk about it feels really powerful.
I had a similar experience recently with a poem that I wrote. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I was diagnosed with that just about a year ago. And I wrote a poem about it for a class last fall, because it's spring now. And I tried to be, much of the poem is about how I don't ovulate on my own and menstruate on my own. I wanted to write a poem about that, but I tried to make it really unmaternal sounding and not so much focused on this thing that my body can't do. And then, you know, a couple of weeks ago, actually, someone who was in that class was like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I appreciate that it wasn't like this whole sentimental understanding of yourself as something that's supposed to give birth, because it's a condition that I have too, and you know, it's one of those things that sounds way more major because of these associations with, you know, birth giving. So that was kind of a cool conversation to have, where I managed to write about something in a way that was very individual to myself rather than connected to all these other associations that have to do with the reproductive system.
Sure. Yeah. Talked about.
It's exhausting. It's honestly exhausting, because first of all, I mean, for me, like the way that I write is really just like to like the whole world and the internet, and like as an example, I hadn't really told my mom that I was like a survivor of rape, and so she was like, she read my blog and was like, I didn't know you were raped at like dinner one night, and it was like, oh hey, I guess we're having this conversation now. Okay. Wow. And so I have had many of those experiences where people are like, hey, I read this thing that you wrote, let me tell you this like intensely personal thing that's gonna fuck up your whole day, but like I put myself out there, and like I said, that's what I love about it. And so, I don't know if that even answers the question, but it's fucking intense. I'm sorry, it's not fucking intense.
It's okay.
It's really intense.
It's the Women's Center blog. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting, but I love it.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I started talking about it openly, I was telling the story about how I, realized I might have this condition, and at some point I was like, I paused in the story to try and like collect my thoughts about it, and everybody in the room thought I was going to start crying. And then I continued story, and I finished, and I was like, wow, that sounds like so emotional for you. And that's just not how my experience of it was, where I was just like, oh, this is just something that I have, and we'll figure it out. I was like, no, I feel pretty calm. I mean, not really calm, but like, it's not like that. I'm not, bursting at the seams about this thing, it's just like, it's really common and a lot of people have it. They're like, well, no, I don't think you've really like figured out how you feel about it yet. So that was frustrating, obviously, because I was telling them the truth about how I felt about something, and I wasn't believed about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm sorry, I have to take my bread out of the oven. I will be right back.
Yeah.
Like maybe when you asked me to do this interview. I mean, it's funny because it's like totally tied up in unworthiness. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not a writer. I just like write a blog every 2 weeks. Like I'm not a writer. Like I've only written 50,000 words of a novel. I'm not a writer.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's totally unworthiness. It's like, yes, I'm a writer. I like produce words that people appreciate, and I like hone my craft or whatever. But I don't. I mean, it's. I do some days and some days I don't. It's like. You never think you're good enough.
Yeah.
One
Same.
never thinks one's good enough, I guess.
No, same. that word makes me uncomfortable.
Why?
It's just I don't know, when I say it out loud, it's like I almost see myself as that stereotype of a writer.
Yeah.
But what has
holding a pen.
Yeah, like holding a quill and like maybe wearing, I don't know, smoking over some cigarettes or something.
With like a moleskin in a coffee shop.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm just like, and that's not who I am or who I want to be. But something that has actually helped is working in the writing center at UB, where their attitude is everybody's a writer, they just don't realize it. Where it's just like, even if you're you write papers for school, but if you are writing, I'm trying to think of some examples, like if you're writing, business proposals, like you're a writer. If you're writing, if you want to learn how to like write grants and stuff, you're a writer.
Yeah.
If you're even just like writing emails all day, every day, like you're a writer. You're just specific to that email genre. So that is it's actually helping me kind of break that wall down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of bring up like having somebody else redefine writer in order to feel that you are a writer, because for me that's what like feminism did in many ways. Let me plug feminism a little bit, but yeah, like it just like empowers you to do and be. So when I write, I am a writer. Like I don't know, like it feels more holistic and easier to say that when I come at myself through like a lens of like I am an intersectional feminist and therefore I am also a writer. I don't know, but
yeah, I think too that often like definitions of self are so like sort of siloed. You know what I mean? So you're like, I am a writer, like I am a feminist. I'm like, no, I'm just Susie, and I'm not saying I don't believe in labels. Like, of course they're helpful and like useful in like many ways. But it's sort of like I am this person who is a writer and is also like a feminist, and like you know what I mean? It's sort of like parts of a self, and I think that's how I have sort of like made myself believe that I can do it, because it's like, okay, it's just part of the many things that I am.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. That's a really nice way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the first thing that I do is for my blog, I keep a pretty strict schedule where it's like I try really hard to get 2 blogs out a month. It doesn't always happen. And so it's like, okay, well, this is what I have and I have to put something out. So like, here we go. This is the schedule. Like, you decided this. You know what I mean? And the other thing too is that I have like so many wonderful women in my life that I'm like, I I think this is shit, can you read it? It's not. And that's incredibly helpful, where it's just like, hey, I'm writing this thing, and I'm like, it feels like I'm not saying anything, like, can you please give me your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
So sort of like, I hate to say like leveraging your network, but in a way it sort of is. I mean, it's like, I need backup, and so I'm like lucky to have people like you. I mean, you've edited my blogs for me before, you know, just like people that like have your back and are like, yeah, like you're worthy, put this out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, something that I'm trying to do right now is April is National Poetry Month, and it's also NaPoWriMo, like NaNoWriMo. So
It's actually Camp NaNoWriMo.
Camp NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you define NaPoWriMo?
Yes, NaPoWriMo is
watching?
National Poetry Writing Month. So it's the first syllable of all those words. And the goal for the month is to write one poem for every day of April. I'm behind. I'm like 3 days behind, but it's something that I look forward to every year, because it's just like, you know, there's blogs that publish prompts every day, and what a lot of those prompts do is it's either, you know, they can be form prompts like, oh, write a sonnet today, or write a ghazal today, or it's like a content prompt. Like there was one that an Instagram account that I follow, Youth Speaks, posted that's like, write an interview with someone who is no longer here. Maybe that person's passed away or is like moved or something. And I was like, well, that is a great idea. And think of it, and then I was like thinking of like dialogue and poems. So right now that's kind of what I'm doing to help with what writer's block is, accepting outside ideas about what you can write about, which I find really helpful. But I think, like Susie said, like having a network is very helpful. I find being in workshops with other people is very helpful. Well, I'm not a natural collaborator, but when you have an idea of what your poem or your story is conveying, it's helpful to see what others are inferring. And what feelings they're getting from your poetry, because it's something completely different. Something that sometimes that's great, and sometimes like really cool to see this person's had this whole other experience. But it helps me get a sense of like what the purpose of my poem is and how I want to change my poetry to achieve that particular goal.
Yeah, and NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, which is in November, and the goal is to write 50,000 words in a month, which is what I did, which is how I was like, I'm gonna write this book. And then April is Camp NaNoWriMo, and it just is like a little bit of a looser definition. So like you make a goal for the month, like say 30 hours,
that's
or
great.
25,000 words. And so I honestly I probably wouldn't consider myself a writer at all if it wasn't for NaNoWriMo. I mean, it's like incredibly important to me. And like, if you're thinking about writing a book, check it out. There's like tons of like message boards and stuff. And it's like I wouldn't be who I am if it weren't for like last November, like forcing myself to write 50,000 words. And the idea is that you're just like, if you have to write like fuck 50 times, it's just like, just write 50,000 words, just like get it out. And that's an awesome way to deal with writer's block too, is to just like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write 2,000 words, and like, maybe I won't keep any of them, but at least I've written, and it sort of like moves you through the block of just like, okay, I'm just gonna do it.
Free writing is very helpful in that sense too, where it's just like, I don't have to achieve anything here. I just need to just write, not pick my pen up the page for 5 to 10 minutes, and then usually what'll come up is like might be like phrases that I haven't really considered that'll come up there, or like words that I never use otherwise. And I'll go through and I'll underline them and be like, all right, cannibalize these for future use.
It's interesting that you all talk about it in that sense, because I think it's like, I'm trying to like link this to some women's centering things, but like the idea of like being unproductive to be productive, but like I guess we don't constantly have to be making something that other people have to view and deem valuable in order for that to be valuable. I mean, that's like the essence of like maybe self-care and things like that, but I really like the idea that y'all are presenting, which is just like, it doesn't have to be for anybody but you, and maybe it's not even for you, it's just so you can get through the thing, and that's important in and of itself. I think that's powerful.
That's actually advice that I give to my clients in the Writing Center a lot, because so many people, and they think about having to about the writing process, and I would sit down right now saying they think they're supposed to have a thesis first thing.
Right.
You know, and it's just like, well, no, because you're going to find research that disproves that, or you're going to like talk about it to someone and be like, oh no, wait, that's not really true. Like, you know, you have to like, it's like a constant cycle of like arriving at an idea you've created. So I mean, I find that I'm like, well, don't people have trouble because they feel like they don't have a thesis? I'm like, don't worry about the thesis right now. Just write your ideas down, and we'll talk about how to organize it. And then maybe you write something in the 5th paragraph. You're like, oh, that's what I was saying.
Right.
Then I think kind of like removing sort of the product orientation at the beginning is really helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, honestly, just do it. Just start. I mean, of course, I'm gonna say like NaNoWriMo.
Right.
It's like totally what like kickstarted me into doing what I do. Find people who are also interested in writing and talk to them, bounce ideas off each other, and like honestly, just sit down for whatever amount of time you have every day and just do it. And don't feel like it has to be good or don't feel like it's bad. Just do it. And there's tons of resources out there to help you. NaNoWriMo being one. I love it so much.
Yeah. I would say just start writing. Like, you know, even if you're at the place where you're just like, I'm not really a writer, like that's still important that you're writing. I'd also say, you know, read as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, read people who are, you know, different from you, so you get like, you know, an idea. But it's also important, I think, to read people who are like you, because if you're anyone who's not a white man, then school's not really going to give you that. You know, like I can't tell you like how much I thought I was supposed to write like Bukowski because I thought Bukowski was cool because all of my like you know, idols of my older brother, and I thought like the Beat Generation was like it for literature, and
that's it. That's the pinnacle. We can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
so, but that's not true, and I hate beat poetry now. So you know, it's find a balance. You know, maybe like go into writing like looking for authors who are like you, and then expand from there. I think is really good.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Do you all have anything to add?
If anyone ever tells you you're not good enough, just don't believe them. And find people who see the worth in you.
Yeah.
I would say, no, I lost it.
It's okay. I can cut this part.
Yeah. Poetry is not emotions. A poetry doesn't have to be full of emotion to be good. It can be, and that's fine. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all fucking, like, death and broken hearts.
It's really like you're looking straight into the camera right now.
You can write those things, but you can write about other things, too.
Can you slowly approach the camera to say that?
Poetry is not.
Emotions don't make good poems.
All right. Thank you, y'all. Thank you so much to our interviewees. Again, Susie Hinz, Kerrin Smith.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye.